Welcome to the 3x5 news, views, and reviews scribbled on index cards. We get in and we get out fast, so keep up. Few of my tens of thousands of followers are aware that my main area of expertise, however self-styled, is nuclear weapons. Though it can be inferred by my YouTube avatar, the symbol for nuclear radiation danger, until recently, nuclear weapons had receded to the background. Most Americans seized the end of the Cold War as an excuse to dodge the subject, if only because of the horror that contemplating it evokes in us. We became accustomed to feeling like we didn't have to think about it. Even for those willing to face existential threats such as climate change, nuclear weapons probably remains one existential threat too many. On top of global warming, artificial intelligence, and the invasive species, as Gavin Newsom calls him, known as Donald Trump. Though John Pfeffer of Foreign Policy in Focus said it first, quote, Donald Trump is kudzu. He is out to strangle anything and everything in his path, unquote. Even now, with the Cold War turned hot since Russia invaded Ukraine, we still haven't pivoted to foregrounding nuclear weapons again. The time for that is long overdue. The other day I heard a commentator I respect claim that Russia has been considering using tactical nuclear weapons, the smaller ones, also known as battlefield nukes, until its big brother China put its foot down, no nukes. Also, nuclear proliferation, new countries developing nuclear weapons, is rearing its ugly head again, for a couple of reasons. One, the world has noticed that Ukraine, not to mention Libya, surrendered their nukes in good faith but were still attacked. Two, nations such as Japan, South Korea, and Poland are learning that if they are attacked by China or Russia, the U.S. is unlikely to come to their defense. Most people, however, are not even necessarily opposed to nukes. According to conventional wisdom, which I question, nuclear weapons were not only key to ending World War II, but have prevented major war in the 70 years since. All hail deterrence! We just need nuclear weapons to stand guard looking scary, like bouncers whose imposing physiques discourage anyone from stepping out of line. Life with the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads is no picnic. But what's the alternative? Unless one has the time and interest to listen to erudite arguments that might prove otherwise, the logic of nuclear deterrence, that an adversary won't unleash its arsenal on us if our arsenal is equal or greater in number in yield, aka explosive power, seems self-evident and irrefutable. Anyway, people take solace in the knowledge that, if worse comes to worse, that the last thing presidents want is to push the button, if only to spare themselves and their families. After an attack, they can only hang out in a mountain designed to maintain presidential continuity, such as Raven Rock, for so long. Speaking personally, most of my life I have lived with a fear of nuclear war that's like the low legato roll of a timpani, acting as an undercurrent to the symphony of daily life. As a child in the 50s, the rolls occasionally turned fortissimo, amplified by air raids and school drills. Then came the Cuban Missile Crisis, a cymbal strike to accentuate that timpani. I looked to the skies and often wondered if they would soon be filled with Soviet bombers and we would all die. Like many baby boomers, even before the decade had turned and I reached my teens, I grasped that nuclear weapons meant mutual assured destruction. Growing older, a nagging fear continued to tug at the margins of my consciousness. It was accompanied by an ongoing bewilderment that states continued to make nuclear weapons the foundation of their national security policies. This suggested a defeatism on the part of policymakers and war planners that, in a sane world, would have precluded them from being hired for those jobs. Furthermore, the willingness of those ostensibly brilliant individuals to work within such narrow constraints and, on the other hand, their unwillingness or inability to conceive of alternatives to nuclear war suggested a lack of imagination, so pronounced that it too would have disqualified them from their positions. This year marked the 80th anniversary of the dropping of the nuclear bombs. In July, the bulletin of the atomic scientists, you know, the ones who run the doomsday clock, now poised at 89 seconds to midnight, the closest it has been to not just nuclear war, but any similar global catastrophe. They helped host something called the Nobel Laureate Assembly for the Prevention of Nuclear War in Chicago. If that sounds impressive, it was a gathering of nuclear experts and Nobel Prize winners from various categories. As these things inevitably do, it ended with a statement and, as they say, action plan. It encouraged a resurrection of measures that have traditionally been used in the nuclear age but have fallen into disrepair. You know, obvious stuff like nuclear nations engaging in dialogue, keeping back channels of communication open, as the US and Russia did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Keep nuclear weapons out of space, and instead of AI, make sure that humans maintain control and command over nuclear control and command. As for the last, that's going to happen. You may have heard of the Overton window. The Overton window. It's not really a window that opens and shuts. Instead, imagine a card with a rectangular piece cut out. Hold the card over various issues and move it left to right. In recent years, that cutout rectangle or window has moved to such a degree that issues that were once so far right of the window that they were invisible have now assumed pride of place in the window. An issue, such as nuclear arms control, may still exist on the edge of our peripheral vision to the left, but nuclear disarmament, that is, the complete elimination of nuclear weapons, is completely out of the picture, lost in the wilderness to the west or the left. Anecdotally speaking, I feel that most Americans are resigned to our perceived need for nuclear weapons because other nations possess them, and because of the emergency of the moment we live in with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and our fraught relationship with other nuclear states such as China and North Korea. There was a time that arms control was laboriously pursued, and treaties with the Soviet Union and post-Soviet Russia for a while were signed. But with tensions as heightened as they are, and with the US and Putin both allergic to treaties, attempting to pursue arms control seems futile to me at present. Meanwhile, disarmament is a fantasy. Before progress can be resumed in those areas, I know I'm stating the obvious. Some measure of peace with Russia must first be attained. Yes, I know. That sounds at least as unlikely as nuclear disarmament itself.